The Moonfire Hall had never felt so cold. Aelith stood at the edge of the ceremonial platform, her hands folded before her, her spine straight as iron despite the tremors threatening to tear through her body. 1,000 wolves had gathered to witness this moment. The flickering glow of the sacred pyres cast long shadows across their faces, illuminating expressions that ranged from curiosity to contempt. She did not belong among them. Everyone knew it. An Omega with no bloodline, no fortune, no family name worth speaking aloud. The daughter of a disgraced healer who had died in poverty when Aelith was barely old enough to remember her face. She had grown up in the servants' quarters of the Valkoran stronghold, scrubbing floors and mending clothes, and learning to make herself invisible. The only kindness she had known came from Nella, the old cook who slipped her extra bread when meals were scarce and treated her like a daughter when no one else would. Until Kaelin had seen her. Her gaze found him now, standing at the center of the raised dais where the Alpha throne loomed like a monument to power. Kaelin Voss, Alpha King of Valkorin, ruler of the 7 Packs, commander of 10,000 wolves. His dark hair was swept back from a face carved from mountain stone, sharp jaw, high cheekbones, eyes the color of molten gold that had once looked at her as though she were the only soul in existence. Those eyes would not meet hers tonight. For 8 months, she had been his secret. His whispered confession in moonlit corridors, his stolen kisses in the garden where the night blooms grew, his hands against her skin as he swore that she was his fated mate, that the bond between them was real, that nothing could keep them apart. The council wants political alliances, he had told her 3 weeks ago, his forehead pressed to hers. They will parade their candidates before me at the bonding ceremony. But it is a formality, Aelith. When the moment comes, I will choose you. She had believed him. Her hand drifted to her stomach, hidden beneath the simple gray dress she wore. Not the ceremonial white of the candidates who stood in a glittering row at the base of the dais. She had not been granted that honor. Inside her, a secret grew. A flutter of life she had discovered only yesterday. She had planned to whisper it to him tonight, after he chose her, after the world knew what they were to each other. Now the words sat like stones in her throat. The candidates will present themselves, the High Priestess announced. 5 women ascended the dais steps, daughters of the most powerful houses in Valkorin. Each one draped in white silk, each one beautiful, trained, worthy. And at their center, with hair like spun midnight and a smile that did not reach her ice-blue eyes, walked Morvenna of House Valdrath. The murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Valdraths controlled the eastern territories. Their warriors numbered in the thousands. Their wealth was legendary, and their daughter had made no secret of her intentions toward the throne. Aelith watched Kaelin's face for any sign of the man she knew. Nothing. His expression was a mask, his posture rigid. His hands hung motionless at his sides. Something was wrong. The bond between them pulsed in her chest, a living thread connecting her heart to his. She could always feel him through it, his warmth, his emotions bleeding into hers. Tonight, she felt only cold. Alpha Kaelin Voss, the High Priestess intoned, you stand before the 7 Packs to choose your bonded mate. The kingdom awaits your declaration. The silence stretched like a blade pressed to skin. Aelith stopped breathing. Her mark, the small crescent scar on her inner wrist where he had bitten her in secret 3 months ago, began to burn. Look at me, she begged silently. Kaelin stepped forward. His movements were strange, mechanical, as if he were walking through water. I choose. His voice cracked. For one breathless moment his eyes flickered toward her. And in that fragment of a second, Aelith saw something that cracked her heart in two. Anguish. Raw, screaming anguish trapped behind a wall of forced composure. Then it was gone. I choose Morvenna of House Valdrath. The hall erupted. Cheers, howls of approval. the thunderous stamping of feet as the political alliance was sealed with 3 words. Aelith felt the bond between them twist and tear. Her mark blazed with agony. She gasped, her hand flying to her wrist, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. No one looked at Aelith. No one saw the Omega crumbling at the edge of the platform. And that was what saved her. Because in the space between one heartbeat and the next, something shifted inside her. The pain was still there. But beneath it rose something else. Fury, pride, a refusal to let them see her break. The High Priestess raised her hands for silence. The Alpha has chosen. Does any voice speak against this bond? Aelith moved before she knew what she was doing. No voice speaks against it. Her words cut through the fading cheers. Every head turned. Every eye found the small figure in gray who had stepped forward. Aelith lifted her chin, meeting Kaelin's gaze. The color drained from his face. I do not challenge this bond, she continued, her voice steady despite the earthquake inside her chest. I accept it. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the crowd. I am not speaking to the ceremony. Her eyes never left Kaelin's. I am speaking to him. She reached for her wrist, for the small crescent scar that had been her hope, her promise, her foolish belief. I, Aelith of no house, accept your rejection, Alpha. The hall went silent. Not polite silence, not respectful silence, the stunned silence of 1,000 wolves watching something they had never seen before. An Omega, turning away first. Kaelin's mask splintered. Aelith. But she was already moving, already turning her back on the dais, on the throne, on the man who had sworn she was his forever. She walked through the parted crowd with her head high and her heart in ruins. Behind her, she heard Kaelin's voice break. Aelith, wait. She did not wait. She did not look back. And when the great doors of Moonfire Hall closed behind her, Aelith finally allowed herself to run. The night air hit her like a fist of ice. Aelith stumbled down the stone steps, her vision swimming, and her lungs burning with sobs she could no longer contain. The composed mask she had worn before 1,000 witnesses cracked and fell away. He chose her. The words echoed in her skull like a death knell. He looked at me with anguish in his eyes, and he still chose her. Her mark screamed with pain. Not the dull ache of a healing wound, but the violent, tearing agony of a bond being ripped apart. She pressed her palm against her wrist and felt heat blazing beneath her skin. The bond was not severed. It should have been. When an alpha rejected their mate, the connection was supposed to dissolve. The mark would fade within days, leaving nothing but smooth skin and bitter memories. But hers burned brighter than ever. Why? Aelith reached the outer courtyard before her legs gave out. She collapsed against the ancient stone fountain, gasping for breath, her free hand pressed to her stomach. His child, growing inside her while he pledged himself to another. She had to leave. Tonight. Now. Before the celebration ended and the questions began. Before Morvenna's spies discovered what she carried. Before Kaelin came looking for her with excuses she could not bear to hear. If he came at all. Aelith forced herself to stand. She reached her tiny room and gathered her belongings with shaking hands. 3 dresses, a pouch of dried herbs for the nausea that plagued her mornings, her mother's ring, the only inheritance she possessed. At the window, she paused. Across the courtyard, the lights of Moonfire Hall blazed with celebration. Music drifted on the wind. The sounds of a kingdom rejoicing in their alpha's choice. Aelith pressed her fingers to the cold glass. May she give you everything I could not, she whispered. Then she pulled her cloak tight around her shoulders, slipped through the servants' gate and disappeared into the winter darkness. She did not see the figure that burst through the hall doors moments later. She did not see Kaelin fall to his knees in the empty courtyard, his hands clawing at his chest where the bond burned like molten iron. She did not hear the howl that tore from his throat, a sound so raw that wolves across the stronghold stopped mid-celebration and shivered with instinctive dread. and she did not see Morvenna watching from the tower window above, a small glass vial tucked into her sleeve, a satisfied smile playing at her lips. By the time Kaelin reached the servants' quarters, Aelith's room was empty. By the time he screamed her name into the uncaring night, she had already vanished beyond the border. And by the time he understood what had truly happened in Moonfire Hall, it would be far, far too late. 4 months. That was how long it took for Aelith to stop expecting him to find her. She had fled to Mist Hollow, a village so small it appeared on no official maps, nestled in the forested hills at the edge of the kingdom's forgotten western reach. The people there asked few questions of the young widow who arrived in the dead of winter with a swollen belly and hollow eyes. She told them her name was Wren. She told them her mate had died in a border skirmish. They believed her. The village healer had passed the previous autumn, and Aelith's knowledge of herbs and remedies quickly made her valuable. She delivered babies. She treated fevers. She brewed teas for aching joints and poultices for wounds. In return, they gave her the abandoned cottage at the forest's edge. It was enough. The pregnancy progressed with alarming speed. Wolf children grew faster than human ones, and by her 4th month, Aelith looked nearly 6 months gone. The village midwife had examined her with raised eyebrows. Twins, perhaps, the old woman had said. Or one very strong pup. Aelith had not responded. At night, she would lie with her hands on her belly and feel the life stirring within. 2 distinct movements, 2 heartbeats echoing alongside her own. Kaelin's children, heirs to the throne of Valkorin, growing inside a rejected Omega in a village no one remembered existed. What tortured her more was the mark. It should have vanished by now. Every text she had ever read said the same thing. Rejection severed the connection. The claiming mark faded within weeks. But the crescent scar on her wrist remained. More than remained. It had darkened, deepened. Some nights it burned so fiercely that she had to submerge her arm in cold water just to sleep. And sometimes, in the space between waking and dreaming, she felt something through it. A presence, a searching, an anguish that did not feel like her own. She told herself it was imagination, wishful thinking. Kaelin had made his choice. He was probably married to Morvenna by now. He had forgotten her. So why did her mark burn hotter with every passing week? Spring was beginning to crack through the frost when the answer came. Aelith was hanging herbs to dry when young Pella, the baker's daughter, came running up the path. "Mistress Wren, you must hear." "What is it, child?" "Traders came through from the east. They bring news from Valkorin." Pella's voice dropped to a breathless whisper. "The Alpha King has gone mad." The room tilted beneath Aelith's feet. Mad? They say he has torn apart half the kingdom searching for someone. A woman. Pella's eyes widened. They say he has not slept in months. That his own council fears to be in the same room with him. Aelith gripped the table to keep from falling. "And the queen? Morvenna?" Pella shook her head slowly. "There is no queen, mistress. The traders say the bonding was never completed. They say the Alpha refused to touch her." The girl leaned closer. "They say he has offered 5,000 gold pieces to anyone who can find the woman he truly wants." Aelith's mark exploded with heat, and somewhere in the forest beyond her cottage, a wolf began to howl. The howl faded into silence, but Aelith's heart continued to pound. She moved to the window on unsteady legs, her hand pressed to her wrist where the mark blazed. Through the frost-touched glass, she could see the tree line at the edge of her property. Nothing moved. "Mistress Wren?" Pella's voice came from behind her. "Are you unwell?" "I am fine. Thank you for the news, Pella. You should return to your father before dark." The girl hesitated, but something in Aelith's expression warned her away. She bobbed a quick curtsy and hurried back toward the village. Aelith looked back at the forest. This time, she saw them. 3 shapes standing motionless between the ancient pines. Large, 4-legged. Their silver-brown fur caught the dying light. Wolves. Not wild wolves. These were different. Their posture was too still, too watchful, too intelligent. Shifters. Aelith's blood turned to ice. They had found her. How? How had they tracked her across hundreds of miles to a village that did not exist on any map? The mark. The bond that should have severed but never did. The connection that still pulsed between her and Kaelin like a living thread. He had followed it. Or someone had. Aelith pressed both hands to her swollen belly, feeling the twins shift restlessly. They could sense her fear. "Shh," she whispered. "We are going to be all right." Through the window, she watched one of the wolves break from the tree line and move closer. It stopped at the edge of her garden, its golden eyes fixed on her cottage. Not attacking. Watching. Waiting. The mark on her wrist flared again, so hot she nearly cried out. And with the heat came something else. A presence. Not the distant echo she had felt in her dreams, but a roaring force slamming against the edges of her consciousness. Searching, seeking, demanding. "Where are you?" The words were not words. They were feeling. Emotion. Raw need translated through the bond. Kaelin. He was not just searching for her. He was hunting her. And he was close. Aelith tore herself away from the window. She grabbed her cloak from the hook by the door. But before her fingers touched the handle, a heavy knock shook the wooden frame. "Mistress Wren," a male voice, deep and commanding. "We know who you are. Open the door, please." The please gave her pause. Assassins did not say please. Aelith's hand hovered over the door handle. Behind her, through the window, she could see more shapes emerging from the forest. She was surrounded. Aelith opened the door with a kitchen knife hidden in the folds of her dress. 3 men stood on her threshold. 2 were clearly warriors, their massive builds marking them as the Alpha King's elite guard. But it was the 3rd man who held her attention. He was older, perhaps 50 winters, with iron-gray hair cropped short and a face weathered by decades of service. A jagged scar ran from his left temple to the corner of his jaw. And his eyes, a deep burnished gold, held something she had not expected. Relief. "My lady." He inclined his head with genuine respect. "I am Corvin, First Beta of Valcorin. We have been searching for you for a very long time." "My name is Wren. I am a simple healer." "You have made a mistake. You are Aelith, formerly of the Valcorin servant's household." Corvin's tone was gentle but certain. "You bear the Alpha King's claiming mark on your inner wrist, and unless my eyes deceive me, you carry his children in your womb." Her grip tightened on the hidden knife. "How do you know about the mark?" "Because the king has described it to every wolf in the realm. Because he confided in me before the choosing, told me he intended to claim you publicly that night." Corvin paused. "Which is why what happened has haunted me ever since." "What do you mean?" "May we come inside? What I have to tell you is not for open air." Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, but Corvin's eyes held no threat. Only bone-deep weariness. She stepped aside. The Beta entered alone. He looked around her modest cottage, his gaze lingering on the small cradle she had been building in the corner. "Twins," he said quietly. "The king does not know. The king made his choice. What he knows is no longer my concern." Corvin turned to face her. "The king made no choice that night, my lady. The choice was made for him." "What?" "The cup of ceremonial wine he drank before the choosing was poisoned. A compound derived from Moon's Bane root mixed with other substances we have not yet fully identified. It suppressed his wolf, severed his connection to his instincts." Corvin's jaw tightened. "Severed his connection to you." Aelith's legs would not hold her. She sank into the nearest chair. "That is impossible," she whispered. "I saw his face. I felt the bond tear." "You felt the poison blocking the bond, not breaking it." Corvin knelt before her. "The effects lasted 3 days. 3 days during which Kaelin moved and spoke like a puppet, making declarations he had no memory of." "Morvenna." Lady Valdrath had been planning this for years. When Kaelin made clear he would not choose their daughter willingly, they took matters into their own hands. Aelith thought of Morvenna's ice-blue eyes, her triumphant smile, the small glass vial she had never seen but could suddenly imagine with perfect clarity. When Kaelin woke from the poison's grip, Corvin continued, the first word from his lips was your name. He ran to your chamber barefoot. When he found it empty, I thought he would bring the stronghold down around us. Tears burned in Aelith's eyes. He has not been the same since. He has not slept properly. He has not touched Morvenna, has not even allowed her in his presence. Corvin's voice dropped. His wolf is at war with him, my lady. A mated alpha separated from his true mate for this long. It is driving him toward madness. Aelith's hand moved to her belly. The twins had gone still, as if listening. Why did you not simply tell the kingdom what the Valdraths did? Because we had no proof. Because accusing them without evidence would have sparked a civil war. He reached into his coat and withdrew a folded letter. This arrived at the stronghold 6 days ago. One of our spies intercepted it. Aelith took the paper with numb fingers. The seal was broken, but she recognized the silver serpent pressed into the dark wax. House Valdrath. The message inside was 3 lines. The healer woman has been located in the western reaches. The problem will be eliminated before the new moon. Long live Queen Morvenna. The paper fell from her fingers. Assassins. Corvin nodded grimly. Kaelin is perhaps 2 days behind me. The bond is pulling him here, but the Valdrath wolves are closer. As if to confirm his words, Aelith's mark blazed with sudden heat. She gasped, and outside her cottage a wolf began to howl. Then another. Then another. But these were not the wolves who had watched her from the tree line. These howls came from the opposite direction, and they were hunting calls. Corvin was on his feet instantly, his hand going to his blade. They are here. The first arrow punched through Aelith's kitchen window before she could draw breath to scream. Corvin tackled her sideways, his body shielding hers as glass exploded across the room. They hit the floor hard, and Aelith gasped as the impact jolted through her pregnant belly. Stay down, Corvin commanded. The front door burst inward. The 2 guards came crashing through, not by choice but by force, thrown by something massive and dark. Wolves poured into the cottage, black as pitch, their eyes gleaming with feral hunger, their movements coordinated with predatory precision. Valdrath assassins. Corvin shifted mid-lunge, his human form dissolving into a huge gray wolf that met the first attacker with a clash of fangs. The small cottage became chaos of snarling bodies, splintering furniture, and the copper scent of blood. Aelith crawled toward the back of the room, one arm wrapped around her belly, the other reaching for anything she could use as a weapon. Her fingers closed around the iron poker beside the cold hearth. A black wolf broke through the melee and lunged toward her. She swung. The poker connected with a sickening crack. The wolf yelped and stumbled. She swung again, driving it back. But there were too many. Through the chaos, she saw Corvin pinned beneath 2 attackers, his gray fur matted with blood. The guards were down. More black shapes poured through the doorway. She was going to die here. No. The word rose from somewhere deep inside her. Not a thought, but a command. She would not let them take her children. Aelith pressed her back against the wall and felt something stir in her chest. A warmth she had carried her entire life but never understood. A gift inherited from her mother, suppressed for years out of fear. Healing magic. But as the power rose within her now, she realized it was more than healing. It was life itself. And life, when threatened, could become something fierce. The golden light bloomed from her palms without conscious thought. It poured from her skin like liquid sunrise, filling the cottage with radiance so bright that the assassin wolves recoiled with yelps of pain. The light swept outward. Where it touched Corvin's wounds, flesh knitted and bone reformed. Where it touched the assassin wolves, it burned like holy fire, sending them scrambling toward the doors in retreat. Within seconds, the cottage was empty of enemies. Aelith slumped against the wall, the golden light fading. Her entire body shook with exhaustion. Whatever power she had unleashed, it had cost her dearly. Corvin shifted back with a groan, blood still staining his torn clothing despite his healed wounds. "My lady," he breathed. "What was that?" She shook her head. "I do not know. I have never—" A howl cut through the night, not a hunting call, not a cry of attack. A howl of anguished recognition. Corvin's head snapped toward the sound. "He is here." Aelith's mark exploded with heat so intense she cried out. The bond that had been muted for 4 months roared back to life. She could feel him now, a tidal wave of emotion crashing through the connection. Rage, terror, need, and beneath it all, love so fierce it stole her breath. The cottage wall disintegrated. Aelith threw her arms over her face as timber and stone exploded inward. Through the dust, a shape emerged. A wolf so massive it barely fit through the gap it had created. Its fur was black as a moonless night. Its eyes blazed with golden fire. Those eyes were fixed on her. The wolf stepped over the rubble, ignoring Corvan, ignoring the groaning guards. It stopped an arm's length away, and then it shifted. Aelith watched the transformation ripple through the massive body, fur receding, bones reshaping. The monstrous wolf dissolving into the form of a man she had loved with every fiber of her being. Kaelin knelt before her in the ruins of her cottage. He was not the king she remembered. His face was gaunt, shadowed by sleepless nights. His dark hair hung tangled and wild. His eyes were rimmed with red and bright with tears. Aelith. Her name broke on his lips like a prayer. His gaze dropped to her belly, to the impossible swell of life she carried. A sound escaped him. Not a word. Not a howl. Something between a sob and a growl, raw with 4 months of accumulated anguish. He reached toward her with shaking hands, and Aelith, exhausted and terrified and still burning with the pain of his betrayal, did the only thing she could do. She pulled away. "Do not touch me." Kaelin froze. His hands hung suspended in the air, shaking with the effort of not reaching for her. His eyes searched her face with frantic intensity. "Aelith, please." "Please what?" "Please forgive you. Please pretend that you did not stand before 1,000 wolves and choose another woman while I watched." "I did not choose her. I would never—" "I was there, Kaelin. I saw your face. I heard your voice." "Because I was not myself." The roar shook what remained of the cottage walls. His control was fracturing, his wolf bleeding through in the glow of his eyes, the elongation of his canines. "The Valdraths poisoned me. They stole my will, my memories, my connection to you. I woke 3 days later with no knowledge of what I had done." Convenient. Kaelin flinched as if she had struck him. "You think I am lying?" "I think I do not know what to believe anymore." Her voice broke. "I spent 8 months loving you in secret, trusting that when the moment came, you would choose me, and then I watched you destroy everything we had. Even through the poison's fog, something in me felt our bond tear. I could not move, could not speak, could only watch you disappear, while my wolf howled in a cage I did not know existed." Aelith's mark flared with heat. Through the bond, she felt the echo of what he described. The helpless, screaming anguish of a soul trapped behind walls of chemical paralysis. She did not want to feel it. 4 months, she said. 4 months I have been alone, carrying your children while hiding from a world that would see them as bastards. Kaelin made a sound like a wounded animal. "Children! Aelith! I did not know. What would you have done differently? Searched harder?" "Yes." His voice cracked. "The poison took you from my mind, Aelith. It stole every memory of your face, your voice, your touch." He pressed his fist against his chest. "But it did not take you from my heart. Even when I could not remember why, I knew something vital was missing. I knew I had to find it or die trying." The words hung in the air between them. Kalen rose slowly to his feet. He did not approach her, did not try to close the distance, but his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her soul ache. From the moment I woke from that nightmare, I have thought of nothing but finding you. I have not slept. I have not touched Morvenna. My wolf has been trying to claw its way out of my chest for 4 months, driving me toward madness because it knows you are my true mate. Tears spilled down Aelith's cheeks. You broke me, she whispered. When you spoke her name, something inside me fractured, and I do not know if it can ever be repaired. Then let me try. Kalen dropped to his knees again. Not the kneel of a king making demands, but the supplication of a man with nothing left to offer but himself. I am not asking for your forgiveness. I have not earned it. I am asking for the chance to prove that the man who loved you still exists. That I will spend every remaining breath protecting you and our children. Including from your kingdom, the noble houses who will never accept an Omega as their queen, including them. I will burn Valkorin to ashes before I let anyone take you from me again. A sob escaped her throat. She wanted to resist, wanted to hold on to the anger that had kept her alive, but the bond pulsed with his sincerity. She could feel the truth of his words, his love, his devotion. I do not know if I can trust you again, she said. I know. I will earn it. However long it takes. Her hand moved without conscious thought, reaching toward his face. Kalen held perfectly still as her fingertips brushed his cheek. If you ever betray me again, she whispered, I will not run. I will destroy you myself. A ragged laugh escaped him. I would expect nothing less. And then he leaned into her touch like a starving man offered salvation. They left the ruins of Aelith's cottage within the hour. Corvin had sent scouts to track the retreating assassins while his guards salvaged what supplies they could. Staying in Mist Hollow was no longer an option. The stronghold, Kalen said, lifting Aelith onto his horse. You will be safest within its walls. Aelith allowed herself to lean back against his chest as the horse began to move. His arm wrapped around her waist, careful of her belly, and she felt the twins stir in response to their father's proximity. They knew him. The journey that should have taken days would take less than one. Kalen had brought his fastest horses and his most trusted wolves. As they rode, Kalen spoke. He told her of waking from the poison's grip, the horror as memories refused to surface. He told her of bursting into her empty chamber. He told her of the weeks spent questioning everyone, the months sending wolves to every corner of the kingdom. My wolf blamed me, he said quietly. Every night it tried to take control. The only thing that kept me sane was the bond. The thread between us that never fully broke. I felt it too, Aelith admitted. The mark that never faded. The dreams where you came to me. Those were not dreams. My wolf, when I finally slept, would reach for you through the bond. Aelith turned her head to look at him. The poison, she said. How do you punish a house that commands 3,000 warriors without evidence? I do not need evidence to know what Morvenna did. I saw her face in the days after the ceremony, the triumph. And instead, I refused to complete the bonding, refused to touch her. A dark smile crossed his lips. The Valdraths have been growing increasingly frantic, which is why they sent assassins. If you are dead, they can claim you never existed. Can force a bonding through political pressure. Aelith's hand moved to her belly. And the children? Would be threats to any heir Morvenna might produce. The coldness of it stole her breath. I will not let that happen, Kalen swore. I will tear the Valdraths apart before I let anyone harm our family. Our family. She turned in the saddle and pressed her lips to his. Kalen made a sound of surprise that melted into hunger. The bond between them roared to life, flooding her senses with his emotions. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were glowing gold. When this is over, he said roughly, I will complete our bond properly, Aelith. I will make you my queen. Before she could respond, a horn sounded from the riders ahead. Corvin's voice carried back. tight with alarm. "My king! The stronghold!" Aelith looked up. The towers of Valcorin rose against the dawn sky, but the banners that flew from their peaks were not Kaelin's. A silver serpent writhed on fields of black. House Valdrath had taken the throne. "How is this possible?" Kaelin's voice was deadly calm. "I have been gone less than a week." Corvin had ridden ahead to gather intelligence. He returned with a face carved from stone. Lord Valdrath struck 2 nights past. He had allies within the guard. The council was taken prisoner. The beta paused. "He has declared you unfit to rule. Lady Morvenna has been proclaimed queen." Aelith felt the blood drain from her face. "They have hostages, 50 servants who refuse to bend the knee, to be executed at sundown if you do not surrender. 50 lives, innocent people who would die because they had chosen loyalty." "We cannot let them die," Aelith said. "Aelith, you cannot enter that stronghold. If the Valdraths capture you, then what? They kill me?" She met his gaze. "They are already trying. At least this way. My death might mean something." Kaelin stared at her, and then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. Pride. "My queen," he murmured. "Even now you think of others." He turned to address the wolves assembled behind them. "The Valdraths believe they have won. They are wrong." The answering howl shook the earth. The assault on Valcorin began as the sun crested the mountains. Within an hour, the outer walls had fallen, but the great hall remained sealed. A messenger emerged under a flag of parley. "Lord Valdrath offers terms. Surrender the Omega woman, and the hostages will be released." Kaelin's response was a snarl that sent the messenger fleeing, but Aelith had heard enough. She slipped away from her guards while Kaelin was occupied. The secret passages she had used as a servant remained unguarded. She emerged from a servant's alcove directly outside the great hall. She knocked. "Lord Valdrath, I am Aelith. I am here to offer a trade." A long pause. Then the doors swung open. Lord Valdrath stood in the entrance, his ice-blue eyes gleaming with cold triumph. The Omega whore herself. Behind him, 50 wolves knelt with hands bound, among them a face she recognized. Nella, the old cook who had shown her kindness when no one else would. The woman who had slipped her extra bread and treated her like a daughter. Their eyes met. Nella shook her head frantically, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "Let them go," Aelith said. "All of them. And I will surrender myself willingly." Valdrath laughed. "Very well." The hostages were cut free and herded toward the doors. Nella gripped her hand as she passed. "Run," the old woman whispered. But Aelith did not run. Morvenna descended the stairs with a blade in her hand. "Do you know how much trouble you have caused me? 4 months of watching Kaelin refuse to touch me." She raised the blade. "Once you are dead, he will have no choice, and your half-breed bastards will die with you." The blade descended, and Aelith's power erupted. The golden light exploded from her body with force that shattered every window. Guards were thrown backward. Lord Valdrath slammed into the far wall. Morvenna screamed as the light struck her, her blade melting in her grip. But Aelith was not done. The power shifted, changed. Not just healing magic, the gift of life, and life when threatened could transform. Pain tore through her body as bones began to break and reform. The twins' magic, awakened by her need, had triggered something impossible. An Omega, shifting for the first time. Her scream became a howl. When the light faded, a wolf stood in the center of the great hall. Silver-white fur gleaming, eyes burning with golden fire. The hall's great doors exploded inward as Kaelin burst through, his black wolf form terrible with rage. His eyes found hers, and even in animal form, she saw his shock, his recognition, his overwhelming pride. Together, they turned to face the Valdraths. Together, they ended it. The battle was over in moments. Lord Valdrath, broken by Aelith's explosion of power, offered no resistance. Morvenna, her beauty marred by burns that would never fully heal, screamed curses as she was bound in silver chains. Aelith shifted back to human form. She had not known such a transformation was possible. Omegas did not shift. It was one of the fundamental rules of their kind. Yet she had done it. The twins, she realized. Their magic had unlocked something ancient in her bloodline. Kaelin reached her side before her legs could give way. He caught her in his arms, his face buried in her hair. "You magnificent, terrifying, impossible woman," he breathed. "You could have died. But I did not." His laugh was ragged and wet with tears. Around them, the loyal wolves of Valcorin emerged from their prisons. They stared at Aelith with something approaching reverence, the Omega who had walked into enemy hands to save them. The Omega who had shifted when shifting should have been impossible. The Omega who would be their queen. That night, in the royal chambers she had never been permitted to enter, Kaelin knelt before her and tilted his head to expose his throat. The ancient gesture of a wolf offering himself to his mate. "Claim me," he said. "Make it complete." Aelith understood what to do. Her wolf, newly awakened, guided her movements as she pressed her lips to the juncture of his neck and shoulder. Her teeth sank into his flesh. The bond exploded. She felt everything. Every moment of his 4 months of searching. Every sleepless night. Every howl of anguish. Every desperate prayer. She felt his love, vast and all-consuming, a force that had nearly destroyed him in her absence. And he felt her grief, her fear, her stubborn determination to protect their children at any cost, her love for him, never extinguished despite her best efforts. When she finally released him, they were both weeping. "My queen," Kaelin breathed against her lips. "My king," she answered. 3 weeks later, the kingdom gathered to witness the formal bonding of Alpha King Kaelin Voss and Queen Aelith of Valcorin. She wore white, the same ceremonial silk she had been denied at the choosing. But this time, she stood beside Kaelin on the dais, his hand clasped in hers, their claiming marks visible for all to see. Lord Valdrath had been executed for treason. Morvenna had been exiled to the frozen reaches beyond the northern border, stripped of her name, her wolf, and her beauty. 1 month after the ceremony, Aelith gave birth to twins. A boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's golden healing light. A girl with silver-white fur when she shifted and eyes that glowed with fire. Kaelin held them both with tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he whispered, "for fighting for us, for never giving up." Aelith reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the claiming mark on his throat. "I told you once that if you betrayed me again, I would destroy you myself," she said softly. "I never said anything about letting our enemies do it for me." Kaelin laughed, the sound bright and free. "My fierce, impossible queen." Outside their window, the wolves of Valcorin lifted their voices in a howl of celebration. A new era had begun. A true mated pair sat upon the throne, and the heirs of the kingdom slept peacefully in their father's arms. They had found each other against all odds. They had survived betrayal, poison, assassination, and war. And they would never be parted again. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story.